Welcome to the Kentucky 4-H virtual experience. Today we're going to be focusing on plants. My name is Eric Comley and I'm the Garrard County 4-H Youth Development Agent. So let me give you some information about plants. In Kentucky we have a little over 2,000 different native species of plants. So the most exact number I've heard is about 2,030. In addition to the 2,030 native species of plants, we also have 570 plants that are either invasive or non-native, but they weren't originally here. And we typically use pioneers as the point where we determine whether it's native or non-native. So, because we have so many different kinds of plants, the question is why do we have so many different kinds of plants? Well, there's a lot of factors that go into why you would have plants in certain spots and not in others. One would be topography. So if you're looking at this right now, you can see that you're looking up a hillside here in Kentucky. So we have all of these sloping hills, but if you get over into the eastern Kentucky, we have mountainous areas. If you get over into western Kentucky, it's very flat. So because we have all this varying range of topography, that obviously opens up the opportunity for different habitats for different plants. In addition to that, we also have different soil types. And so because we may have more acidic soils or more basic soils, then that's all gonna affect. In addition to that, it may be the amount of moisture. So if you're in an area where it's very dry, you're gonna have certain plants that are gonna thrive there. If you're in an area that's very wet, you're gonna have plants that thrive there, and all the range in between. So there's a lot of factors that go into kind of understanding where exactly it is that you're gonna find plants, okay? Now, a couple of other things that you want to keep in mind as you're starting to learn plants. The first thing that you want to kind of focus on is beginning to understand maybe some family characteristics, okay? So of all the plants, like I said, there's 2,600 different species of plants. We have about 180 different families of plants in Kentucky. And so I'm not just talking about herbaceous plants like this, but trees, and then also ferns and those kinds of things, and fern allies. So we have a lot of different families. So it becomes really difficult to try and figure out which each individual type of plant might be. So my friend Blake Newton always talks about with insects that there's more than 10,000 different species of insects in the state of Kentucky. And that's amazing. But he also says there's no way for somebody to know all those different types of insects. So what do we do? And the thing that he does is he focuses on family characteristics. And we should do the same thing for plants. So what you're going to do is you want to look at a family characteristic. So that may be what the flower shape is, that may be the number of petals that may be on it, maybe the number of leaves that are on it, it may be the shape of leaves that are on it. So something is going to be a family characteristic. It's going to be a very broad, general way to look at a group of plants. After you get through family, then if you want to focus on the genus and species, which are basically the technical terms for the scientific names for plants, then, and I don't know why I put air quotes there, but because that's really what they are. But if you want to use the scientific names, then that's going to help you also understand certain characteristics as well. So like the flower that you see here, this is in the group of trilliums, okay? So that's the genus of them. And so then we look at other characteristics here. We see the red petals. We also may want to smell the flower. That's why I generally get really close to it, is I want to smell it as much as I possibly can. And then, there's other things that I'm going to look at. So I know this one as red trillium or Trillium erectum, okay? It's also the family can be broken down into even smaller parts. So there's two groups of trilliums. There's a group of trilliums that are called sessile trilliums, which means the flower is directly on the leaf. But you'll notice that this one has a stalk. Okay, so there are stalked trilliums. So when I look at that, I want to make sure that I recognize those characteristics that are going to help differentiate or give me a better clue about what it is specifically that I'm looking at. Okay, now as we go through and we are looking at plants, what are some easy ways for us? Because it becomes a lot more difficult if you just walk out in the woods and think, oh, this is this, or this is this. You know, you need a little bit of help doing that. So there's a couple of ways that you can do that. One would be, you know, bring field guides with you. And there's all kinds of cool field guides that are out there, some that are specifically focused on Kentucky, or at least the region that we're in. And I'll put up some of those resources at the end of this video. Another thing that you may want to do is you may want to bring out an adult with you to go on a hike and to be able to figure out maybe some of the plants that you have in your area. So bring out an adult with you and somebody that you know that knows a little bit about plants. Another thing that you could do is actually there's an app, or there's a few apps on your phone that you could use as well. So there's one called iNaturalist that I like to use all the time. And iNaturalist, I can take a picture of the flower and then I can do a couple of things on my phone and it'll actually give me suggestions on what that flower might be. So it is, there's a variety of ways that you can start to learn the different kinds of plants that you have in your area. And one thing that I would always encourage is that you keep a list. Keep a list of the things that you find, and maybe if you don't know what it is, maybe write down some characteristics. If you do have a phone, take a picture of it, but write down some characteristics that you see. Maybe it has big leaves, or maybe it has beautiful red petals, whatever it might be that's going to help it stand out to you and help you remember. Okay, so a couple of other things that I would say is, why are plants important? Well, obviously we know that trees and other plants, they put out oxygen for us to breathe. And that's one of those things that we really kind of take advantage of, that plants do for us, and that's important. But why else? Okay. So we talk about how they affect ecosystems. So the plants that you see right now, the ones that are up on the hillside here, maybe the yellow ones, which are called woodland poppies, or the trilliums that are here, or maybe this one right here, which is Dutchman's breeches, or maybe this one here that's spring beauty. All of those come together to form this forest floor, this spring ephemeral season. And that's really important because as pollinators start to come out, they may rely solely on some of these plants that are coming out in the season. In addition to that, you look and you see you've got trees and you've got all these plants. Well, if we didn't have those, imagine the amount of erosion, which is that soil being moved from one location to another. Imagine the amount of erosion if the root systems of the plants that you see here weren't holding on to this hillside. So it's really, you know, there's a lot of factors that we have to keep in mind about why we think plants are so important. Outside of just the basic ecosystem and some of the things that help us keep our soil, is they're beautiful. I mean, you can't help but be struck. And in the place that I'm in right now, I'm looking at two different kinds of trillium that I can see from here. I'm looking at celandine poppies. I'm looking at all kinds of really beautiful, bright, colorful flowers. And so you have to appreciate the diversity of flowers that we have in Kentucky. So that's a little bit about some of the plants that we have here. A couple of 4-H projects that you can do. One especially is there is I'll talk about two. One is the photography project, and I'm going to do some photography while I'm laying here looking at this plant. There is one on wildflowers or native plants. And so if you're looking for a 4-H project that revolves around knowing a little bit about plants, you can actually get out and do some photography. And that's a great project for you to do for your county or your state fair. Another project that you could do, and this is one that I wouldn't come out and necessarily take anything from out here, but you can create an herbarium, which is creating your own ecosystem. And there's plenty of resources, and I'll try and put some of those links at the end of this presentation. So if you're thinking, oh, you know, this is really pretty to look at, but how does it help me with 4-H? You know, you could do the photography project, you could do an herbarium project. If you're interested in trees, you could do leaf collection projects, or you could do a leaf print project. There's all kinds of opportunities that exist out there. And one thing that we have coming up, and it's going to be happening over the entire year from 2021 to 2022, is we're going to be doing a 4-H Bio Blitz. And that Bio Blitz is us going out and using that iNaturalist app to document or catalog all of the cool plants and animals that we have. So the Bio Blitz is not just for plants, but also for animals. So plants are really amazing. I'm fascinated with plants. I've always been fascinated with plants because I think there's so much incredible diversity in plants, and plus they don't move, and I like to take pictures of them, and so it gets a lot easier for me to lay down and take a look at them. If you're ever interested in learning a little bit more about specific types of plants, I do some videos. They're called On the Ground, and you can look those up on the Garrard County 4-H Facebook page or on YouTube, and I'll put out that YouTube link as well. But if you have any questions for me, feel free to reach out to me. My email address is eric, E-R-I-C, .comley, C-O-M-L-E-Y, @uky.edu. And so I'm going to wander over here and look around for a few more plants, see if I can find anything cool. And but if you find something really amazing, make sure that you put it out there, or have an adult put it out there, so that somebody can help you identify it, and you can learn to appreciate plants as well. Thank you for joining me for this Kentucky 4-H virtual experience. If you would like more information about plants or projects related to plants, such as our forestry projects or photography projects, please feel free to reach out to your local Cooperative Extension Service office. Thank you very much.